If you enjoy horror stories, you've probably noticed that many haunted house movies take place in the United States. Believe it or not all of them are fiction. In fact, some of the most famous ones even became movies, like the Amityville house and the story of the family that inspired the Conjuring trilogy. And the 20 stories I've gathered in this video are also real. At least they've been told for so long and by so many people that they've practically become fact. Mansion on Arthur Kill Road. This mansion on Arthur Kill Road, which can be loosely translated to something like the life of death, has a long history of tragedies, fires, multiple suicides, ghosts of crying children, arguing voices. The list of supernatural occurrences goes on. The home of Ozzie and Harriet Nelson. This house in Los Angeles is famously haunted by its former owner, Ozzie. Ozzie and Harriet Nelson were stars of the show The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, which was filmed in their own home. Since Ozzie's passing in 1975, the last 3 owners have reported seeing his ghost wandering the property, hearing doors slam on their own, and witnessing lights turning on by themselves. The house of George Hodel. This mansion, also located in Los Angeles, was home to Dr. George Hodel, a central figure in one of the most infamous horror stories of the century, the Black Dahlia murder. Elizabeth Short was brutally murdered and dismembered, with all of her blood drained, a procedure believed to have been carried out only by someone with surgical expertise. Because of this, no one has ever been interested in buying the house since the doctor's death. Interestingly, American Horror Story. Murder House features a storyline that references this chilling legend. Linwood Hall Mansion. This 33-acre estate in Philadelphia, built in 1900, remains vacant to this day. It is said to be haunted by a dozen ghosts. Whether that's true or not is impossible to confirm, but the mansion remains abandoned for some mysterious reason. The Schweppe Mansion. This historic estate in Chicago once belonged to Laura Shedd. For years, it hosted prominent figures from American and European high society until Laura passed away. She left only a small portion of her fortune to her husband, who took his own life in the mansion 4 years later. Since then, it is said that the two wander the halls alone. To this day, the mansion remains empty. Myrtle's Plantation. This is one of the most famous haunted houses in the United States. Located in Louisiana, it is said that the spirit of a slave named Chloe can still be seen wandering through the plantation. The story goes that Chloe's master caught her eavesdropping at a door, so he punished her by cutting off her ear. Enraged, she baked a poisoned cake intended for him. However, by accident, his wife and 3 daughters were the ones who ate it. Furious, the master took out his wrath on all the slaves in the mansion, executing anyone he deemed suspicious. Blaming Chloe for the tragedy, the other slaves decided to lynch her. Since then, her spirit is said to roam restlessly across the estate. Winchester Mansion. This was the home of Sarah Winchester, daughter-in-law of gunsmith Oliver Winchester. According to legend, after losing both her husband and child, Sarah discovered that all of her family's misfortunes were caused by the spirits of those killed by her father-in-law's firearms. In an attempt to escape the curse, she renovated the house and built over 10,000 windows. However, it was only after her death that strange occurrences began, shadowy figures appearing, doors opening and closing on their own, objects moving without explanation. Some believe these are the vengeful spirits still searching for her. Want to see for yourself? This is one haunted mansion you can actually visit. Haunted Mansion. Another mansion with a grim history. In 1941, the Hort residence was used as a luxury brothel for gentlemen. Years later, after the establishment ceased operations due to illegal activities, several bodies of both men and women were discovered in the house's basement. What was most eerie was that each body had a perfect circle marked over the chest and torso areas. Some claim that the spirits of these individuals still haunt the mansion to this day. LaLaurie Mansion. This house was known by the townspeople as the witch's house. It was said that the owner was a witch, practicing what was considered nearly black magic. According to legend, the Witch of Milan was buried beneath the house, and her spirit still wanders the building to this day. Bailey Mansion. Remember the case of Elizabeth Short, which inspired one of the storylines in American Horror Story, Murder House? Well, this mansion inspired the entire first season of the series. Not much is known about its history, but it is said that the house is haunted and has been empty for years. Lemp Mansion. The Lemp family is marked by a series of tragic deaths within their own home. The first to die was Frederick, the youngest of the Lemp children. After his death, his father, William, took his own life in one of the rooms. Following that, his wife died of cancer. Years later, William Jr., the eldest son, also committed suicide in the same room where his father had died. Finally, Charles, the third son, killed his dog in the basement before taking his own life in his bedroom. The same year as the last tragedy, the property was sold and turned into a kind of guest house. It was then that people began reporting signs of hauntings, such as apparitions and doors closing by themselves. Today, the mansion still operates as a hotel and restaurant, and occasionally hosts a murder mystery dinner event, where guests must solve a mystery while dining. The Villisca House. In 1912, Josiah and Sarah Moore were beaten to death inside their home. Their 4 children and 2 of the children's friends, who were spending the night, were also murdered. To this day, the crime remains unsolved. However, it is said that the spirits of the deceased continue to roam the house, which has become one of the most famous in the country. In fact, it's possible to visit the house and even spend the night there, if you're willing to pay over $400. Still, the tours have become shorter because visitors reported hearing children's voices and witnessing objects move. In 2014, a paranormal investigator was stabbed after visiting the house. It seems that entering is at your own risk. The Beverly Hills House, Los Angeles, is one of the best places for fans of haunted houses, and this one, for example, has a bizarre history. In 1932, actress Jean Harlow lived there with her abusive husband, Paul Byrne. Paul shot himself in the head while sitting in front of a mirror. But incredibly, the butler called the MGM studio to investigate the case, not the police. This has led to rumors suggesting that the death was not a suicide. Many people suspected Paul's ex-girlfriend, but she jumped off a boat and died a few days later. Jean left the house after her husband's death, and celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring became the new owner. He was murdered by Charles Manson's group a few years later, but while living in the house, he claimed to see ghosts, such as when he saw a creepy little man appear in his room, whom he believed to be the ghost of Paul Byrne. He was so terrified that he ran out of the room and found a body hanging with its throat cut in the middle of the entry hallway. There are also reports of 2 other people who died in the pool in the years that followed. LaLaurie House, another house that inspired American Horror Story, Coven. This time, it housed the family of serial killer Madame Delphine LaLaurie. The woman built a torture chamber for her slaves. The place operated until 1843, when a mysterious fire broke out, hiding her secret. It is believed that the victims of the atrocities committed by Madame LaLaurie continue to haunt the property to this day, as there have been reports of screams, moans, cries, and ghostly visions. The house was even once owned by actor Nicolas Cage. The Sallie House, considered one of the most haunted houses in the United States. This was once home to a little girl who died during an appendectomy performed inside the house at the turn of the 20th century. A family who lived there in the 1990s documented their experience on a TV show called Sightings, where they showed objects flying around, often aimed directly at the homeowner. The house is now empty, but it remains a favorite spot for paranormal investigators. You can still book a stay and spend the night there to experience the horror for yourself. The Amityville House. Another famous house in books and movies is the one in Amityville, a village located in the state of New York. The house on Ocean Avenue was the site of one of the most horrific crimes in the United States, when the couple's son killed his entire family, claiming that voices told him to do it. After the house was vacant, the Lutz family moved in. During the 28 days they lived there, they reported strange occurrences, such as doors and windows closing on their own, the feeling of hands scratching them, and sightings of ghosts. LaLaurie Mansion. This is one of the places I've visited. And yes, it does have a creepy appearance, but despite the constant chills, I unfortunately didn't see or hear anything ghostly. In 1977, someone entered the mansion and killed 83-year-old Mrs. Congdon and her nurse. It was then discovered that the culprit was Roger Caldwell, the husband of Mrs. Congdon's adopted daughter, who was desperately in need of money. The investigation went through several phases, during which Marjorie, the daughter, was even pointed out as the real culprit, a claim that was never proven. However, she was later indicted for 3 other murders after being released from prison for being an accomplice in her mother's death. Because of all these mysteries, it is said that Mrs. Congdon's spirit still roams the house, seeking answers. And as I mentioned, you can take a tour of the mansion to learn more about the family's history. If you enjoyed these spine-chilling stories, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates. Ring the bell to be the first to know when a new terrifying story is released. And leave your favorite horror story or a suggestion for the next video in the comments. Until next time, and remember, not every horror story ends when the video finishes.